This next guest needs no introduction. He has done as much as anyone in this country to achieve transparency from government when government doesn't want to be transparent. He is the head of the amazing group Judicial Watch. You know him as Tom Fitton. Tom, great to have you on the show.
Hey, good to be with you, John. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, listen, it's an honor to have you on every time because every time we talk, you guys have a big lawsuit. You're winning something. This week, another major development. Judicial Watch wins an order from a judge, and the FBI must provide new details on the officials listed in the Strzok memo that opened up the spy operation we know as Crossfire Hurricane. Big deal on this. What should we expect to get when the FBI complies?
Well, we expect to get more information about the FBI officials who allegedly were involved in this operation. It was a memo that Strzok wrote to himself, authorizing himself to initiate an unprecedented spy operation against a candidate for the presidency at the time. Now, there's a big question as to whether that quote was the memo that opened it, as opposed to them doing something separately before then.
Right.
But the FBI, incredibly, didn't want to tell us who else was on the memo. And they're also, by the way, withholding other countries that were involved in this. So the court wanted at least information about the titles and what their job duties were. The FBI objected to that. So the court said you have to give it to Judicial Watch. And if divulging that level of information might actually identify the officials before, it's ready or they're ready, then turn it over to me and privately in court. So, it's another way to chip at the secrecy surrounding the worst corruption scandal in American history.
It is amazing how long they have tried to cover up the different names and the different people up and down the chain. You probably remember this, but when we first discovered that Steele had gone to the State Department and why he was working for the FBI and tried to peddle the same stuff to the State Department, there was a memo between the State Department and an FBI official. And originally the government wouldn't give us the name of the guy. It turned out to be the assistant director of the FBI, whose name is clearly a matter of public record. There has been this idea that anyone involved in Crossfire Hurricane gets an extra special secret layer of protection for something that really turned out to be not an intelligence operation at all. Why do you think that is? Is it just bureaucratic covering for each other, or do you think the goal is to keep people away from witnesses who might be able to add to the story of wrongdoing that occurred here?
Well, it's a combination of everything. First of all, the resting state of the deep state is secrecy. So they don't want to turn over anything just on principle. And, the courts previously had given them an out in terms of withholding the names of government officials in FOIA requests. But as you point out, typically those names are of junior level,
right?
Admin people who, there's not much public interest in their identity, as opposed to high level officials involved in the issues we're talking about that they're now abusing the law to try to hide.
It's just amazing. It is. And remember, the very first person convicted in the Durham case was not a guy that was on the radar, right? It was a lawyer downstream. The idea that people downstream aren't relevant to the American public's understanding of this case, that one blows it away. And, no one knew who Kevin Klein-Smith was originally. And yet today, he is the first convicted person in the Durham case.
But going back a little bit, John, I mean, what's extraordinary about this, in addition, is that this electronic communication, which is like one of the keystone documents, only came out because of Judicial Watch's lawsuit.
That's right.
Durham didn't get this out to us.
Nope.
And this is the frustration we have here, is that, we're all hoping for justice in the Durham investigation, but boy, he's slow and really quite limited in the scope of who he's going after, at least currently.
Yeah, no, it is a slow process. There's no doubt about it. I suspect the trial will tell a larger story, but it's just a trial of one guy on one charge in what is now clearly a very big conspiracy to have misled the American public. One of the things that I think is important about that founding document, the original electronic communication that Pete Strzok does, is that we had Kevin Brock, the former intelligence chief for the FBI back in the Mueller years, very respected guy. He looked at it and said three things. One, this violates the rules. Strzok both opens the investigation and approves the opening investigation. That's not right. Two, there is no predicate that would meet the test. Anyone who's been trained as a supervisor of the FBI would not consider this a predicate that would justify opening of a criminal investigation. And then 3, he pointed out something really interesting. When I got the declassified documents from President Trump, some of them that they got declassified, there's a memo where they're meeting with one of the informants right away in August and basically saying, oh, don't bother with Papadopoulos. We're no longer interested in him. So they open up on July 31st saying, oh, Papadopoulos, the whole reason. 11 days later, they're telling the informant, don't even bother looking at him. We're not even interested in him anymore. In 11 days, they went from opening to, wait a second, they don't even look at the guy. The idea that someone as senior as Kevin Brock could see through this, what does it say about the McCabe-Comey team allowing that EC to open up without the proper proof?
Well, they were anti-Trump activists. They were nervous about Trump, and they were looking for any hook, and they were willing to break all the norms. You know, they talk about norms, right?
Yeah.
Trump breaking the norms. Well, the norms were broken with respect to Trump in terms of the abuse of power to target him. And as you highlight, there wasn't a basis to open an investigation into, quote, a regular American, or let alone a candidate for the presidency. I mean, it was unprecedented activity by the FBI, even going back to Nixon and Johnson and, you know, Kennedy, where the FBI was regularly misused for political purposes. There's nothing comparable. This is why I call it the worst corruption scandal in American history. There's nothing comparable in terms of the misuse of these government agencies to target the political opposition of the party in power.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That's what makes this so troubling. It's the banana republic that we never wanted to become, the FBI engaging in that sort of a silliness. You have another big win this week. I think it came out Monday. Judicial Watch got documents showing that a Texas researcher was tipping off the Wuhan lab of what U.S. Congress might be interested in investigating. How surprising was that to you to see the University of Texas medical branch doctor basically warning him, hey, the Americans might be looking at you? It seems like the ultimate tip-off, doesn't it?
Yeah, this Dr. LeDuc, I think his name is pronounced.
Yes.
So, you know, he's one of the top. It's not so much he's from Texas, and there was this. He was leading one of the most important laboratories in the country when it came to biological research.
Of course.
So, you know, he's kind of like one of the top people in the country in this area, and he has this expertise. And again, it shows that you have the medical establishment in this country working hand in glove with their colleagues in China to really help them with investigations for which the Congress is rightly investigating them and giving them a heads up. It's really quite extraordinary.
It is. And he basically is clearing with the, if I understand correctly, reading through this, clearing with the Wuhan researcher what his story is going to be, basically synchronizing their story. I think there's a moment that I've been approached repeatedly for details of work, attaches a draft summary of what I'll be providing to the leadership, knowing, of course, that would go from the university probably to Congress at some point. In fact, he says likely to go to congressional committees. Weird to see a witness trying to coordinate their stories behind the scenes before giving it there. This club of researchers between China and America, there seems to be such a cozy relationship that they're all protecting each other without regard to what maybe the American interest might be in this. Is that part of this idea that you've now begun to expose the clickiness of this scientific community?
Yeah, Fauci and others knew about what Wuhan was up to. They covered it up. It's clear in the documents we've uncovered. Everyone knew there was gain of function going on, not only in China, but here in the United States, that type of research. And early on in the pandemic, they were more concerned about protecting China, despite all the evidence China was deleting data and intimidating their own people. But when you look at these documents, you can see even the Wuhan Institute people were giving the hand to the face to the Americans here because they didn't want to get involved because they knew they were more. It wasn't just the United States that was going to be going after them, but they had to answer to the totalitarians running the Chinese state.
Yeah, it is stunning. And the culture really does flow down from Fauci. This is his way of doing business, which is, this is our science. We're the scientists. It's our story to tell. The facts be damned. We're going to control the story. And I think that we've seen that mindset not only comes from Fauci, it filters all through the NIH community, including down to the independent researchers that get their money from NIH at these different universities.
Yeah, we're talking about the deep state. The deep state that attitude is as present in NIH and HHS and all those top medical federal agencies as it is in the FBI and NSA. They'll break the rules, they'll lie, they'll withhold information, and they'll target their opposition just as much as the bad guys in the intelligence community will.
It's just amazing. It really is. And the Judicial Watch's work has been so essential at exposing not only the substance of the communication, but I think more importantly, the mentality of these science bureaucrats, that this is our information, not the public's. The public's too dumb to understand what we're doing. We are science, as Fauci would say. Really remarkable work that Judicial Watch has done to bring this all to light and to continue to dig where a lot of people have been afraid to dig. Part of the reason, because when you dig here, you often get censored. And I think you just had yet another censorship episode, right? With YouTube censoring another of your videos.
Yeah, they took down one of our videos and locked out our account for 7 days. We're the nation's largest and most effective government watchdog group. And supposedly we put out election misinformation, which is a false smear.
Right.
I know exactly what is appropriate for YouTube. I never say anything that YouTube shouldn't be able to approve. But YouTube has taken the partisan position that anyone who raises any questions about the 2020 election or even debates the issue is going to be deleted and censored. And it's, as I said, it's a partisan ideological effort. And Judicial Watch was censored. I see Heritage Foundation was just censored.
Yeah.
So as Elon Musk, pushes for free speech at Twitter, the other big tech companies are escalating their suppression of free speech. It's really we talk about China. It's not much different here because we know in the background we have evidence of it. And, of course, the Biden administration has been proud of the fact that they've been encouraging big tech. So the government has been pushing for this censorship, and big tech is more than happy to oblige. So it's an ugly scenario.
It sure is, and it's becoming more prevalent. And now you have the mentality of big tech about to move into the government with the new DHS Disinformation Governance Board. And Nita Jankowicz, we have a video up this morning where she gives a speech last October, right after the Justice Department has ordered the FBI or sicked the FBI on parents who are at these school board protests raising concerns about CRT, that people who are opposing CRT are, in her words, disinformers. So basically anything that opposes your ideology is disinformation. It's not based on the facts. It's based on your ideological standpoint. How concerned are you about that mentality and the fact that this woman now theoretically could be in charge of a board very soon?
Well, it's a totalitarian Marxist worldview. She's a proponent of critical race theory. She uses it as the basis to justify her censorship. So, of course, anyone who opposes critical race theory must be part of the disinformation gang, which is a Marxist term as it is. This person hates the First Amendment. The organized left hates the First Amendment. And the Biden administration has been embracing attacks on the First Amendment that we haven't seen in modern history here in our country. It's quite extraordinary. They've set up this board with this radical leftist who is not only an ideologue but a nasty partisan. And on top of that, they are doing it right in the middle of an election season, again, to suppress voices that might otherwise be out there advocating for removing them from power. I mean, it's what totalitarians do all over the world. And we're seeing the rising totalitarianism here at home. It's really, really disturbing.
No, it really is. And you've been on the front lines for a long time, starting to expose this, because if bureaucrats had their way, we would never know this was going on. And you're cracking through that ice every day. One other place, because I've been the beneficiary of much of this, is the great work Judicial Watch has done in the Hunter Biden case. And you had I didn't get a lot of attention, or didn't get as much attention as I think it should have got, a new lawsuit that you have filed against the State Department for messages sent through the SMART system, which is their kind of backdoor. I think they oftentimes will refer to it as they're going on the high side to communicate. Why could this be very important? This is a body of documents that we don't think Congress got a lot of visuals into, right? So this could be a whole new body of documents.
Yeah, we have some documents, John, and you've seen them too, about Hunter and Ukraine and how his business dealings there were interfering with our foreign policy in Ukraine and Russia,
right?
And the corruption there. So we know there's already material in that sort of, as you say, that kind of key official messaging system. The second area that we don't have a lot of insight on, which I think is curious, is China. I'm not aware
Great
of seeing
point.
many State Department documents about his dealings in China.
No.
And there's no doubt if he's going over there 5, 6, a dozen times, however many times he went over there,
Yep.
both with Secret Service and without Secret Service protection.
And once with his father on Air Force Two, which is an official event.
That's right. So the State Department, necessarily would have material about what was going on there. And it goes to show you that after 2 years, it's like, well, there's still basic information, basic questions that haven't been answered about Hunter Biden. And, it highlights the need, again, for a special prosecutor into the Biden issue, because right now it's all being done by direct political appointees of Garland and President Biden, and the regulations, according to what we were told during Mueller's era, require a special counsel be appointed when there's this obvious conflict of interest.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, your work on Hunter Biden, on many things, Russia collusion, COVID-19, is epic work, because it has really wrenched from the hands of bureaucrats the truth that they want to keep so desperately buried. And we benefit every time you're in action, Tom, and great folks at Judicial Watch. Thanks so much for bringing us up to speed on all these really important things. We're gonna be keeping a close eye on a lot of these cases, particularly that FBI one. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see what you get in that next lawsuit.
Thank you, John.